What's going on, everybody? Do not adjust your channel.
Good evening. Good
It
evening.
is, in fact, a little more brown in the Mount Chan channel. What's up, Joel? This is the average Shad with the imposter Mountain Shad taking over for today's stream. And welcome and welcome. So, today we're going to be talking about one of the most mind blowing topics out there. Are we living in a simulation? From Elon Musk to Nick Bostrom, some of the brightest minds have been talking about the possibility that we are, in fact, living in a computer simulation.
That's right, folks. But what does that mean? Is it even possible? And if it is, what does it say about our reality? Grab your favorite drink, sit back, and let's dive into this world of simulated reality. We'll be bringing you expert insights, thought-provoking discussions, and a glimpse of the future of what our simulated world could be. And this is going to be a wild ride, so hang on tight, and let's get started.
What's going on, Mark Brooks?
What's up, everybody out there? Thanks for joining us. We've got a culture invasion here as Imposter Mountain Chad. And we are going to start off with evidence that we are living in a simulation. Let's see how this goes for us. Give me just a second here.
Is this reality? Well, we're experiencing something right now, so maybe the better question is, what is reality? Could everything we see, everything we experience, everything that exists in our entire universe be artificial? Supporters of simulation theory believe that not only is it possible that we're living in a simulation, it's likely. And the more we look for evidence, the more we find. Let's find out why.
And he's got the fun little fish off to the side, too.
Yeah.
The idea of the universe being a simulation is not a new one. Theories exist in ancient cultures around the world. Modern simulation theory comes from Nick Bostrom, a philosopher at Oxford who wrote an influential paper on the subject in 2003. Assuming that living in a simulation is possible, Bostrom presents the simulation trilemma, which says one of the following must be true. 1, we destroy ourselves before we're able to create a simulation. 2, we're able to create a simulation but choose not to. Or 3, we are definitely in a simulation. Bostrom believes each of these is equally likely to be true. Now, I don't think that's controversial. We use computer models to study the human population, predict the weather, for entertainment. We simulate everything. And when a civilization can create a realistic simulation, the most obvious one to create is that of its own early existence. Bostrom calls this an ancestral simulation. And a civilization that can do this wouldn't just create one simulation, it would create many.
So I'm going to pause right there for just a second. So imagining that it's us in the future and we're creating simulations of our past histories. Why would we simulate hunger?
The same reason why we simulate hunger in video games right now. I mean,
Added
what do you mean,
immersion
why?
and realism.
Yeah, that we do that right now. I mean, every game, even Minecraft simulates hunger.
Yeah. Survival simulators.
Yes, and so at the core, the best simulators simulate everything, including hunger. So if it is an advanced, like we could all be 10. How about 100%? Nobody's real. This is all a simulation. We're all actual NPCs, all of us, and we're just running this game. We're just running this game, and then the creators are all dead.
Yeah.
And it's just one mainframe who's just still spinning because it's got like a fusion core that's just running the simulation over and over again.
So the early days of us starting the survival traits and characteristics or features of games was actually just the beginning of the future where they're simulating our life.
Yeah, I think, and it's inevitable because even Oregon's Trail, old game, that was the big thing: hunger, supplies, food.
Dysentery.
Exactly. So it's almost inherited. It's almost in us when we're creating something. We create ourselves. So
And
it won't.
those extensions of ourselves.
And those simulated civilizations might create their own simulations of the universe, and on like Russian nesting dolls of reality.
Now you're a character in that world and you think you have free will and you say, I want to invent a computer. So you do. Hey, I want to create a world in my computer. And then that world creates a world in its computer. And then you have simulations all the way down.
When Elon Musk was asked what he thought the chances were that our reality is the original base reality,
the odds that we're in base reality is 1 in billions.
Neil deGrasse Tyson is a little more conservative. He thinks the odds that we are in base reality versus a simulated reality is 50-50. A 50-50 chance that everything we experience is artificial, that's still pretty high. And even though we mostly hear what scientists think about this, it's not scientific theory. Simulation theory isn't math, it's philosophy. It isn't physics, it's metaphysics. So what we need is hard evidence that we live in a simulation. And to find proof, all you have to do is look.
All right, here we go.
Let's start at the beginning. There was no space or time. The contents of the entire universe were concentrated to the size of a tennis ball and had a temperature of a quadrillion degrees. Then suddenly, the Big Bang. Everything explodes outward faster than the speed of light. Then about 4.
Yeah, Mark. So is the question that we are living in a simulation or that we are a simulation?
Both things.
Both of them.
Yeah, if this is a simulation, then we technically, even if we were ourselves, if we're in the simulation, then we are, in fact, part of the simulation because we can't put ourselves physically inside a computer.
Yeah.
So even if you're just digitizing yourself in an avatar, then you're still just a simulation. You're a simulation inside a simulation. Strange.
Yeah, you're just a piece of matter within that simulation.
Yeah, bits.
14 billion years later, we've got galaxies and planets and ice cream and K-pop.
Ice cream, chillin', ice cream.
Yeah, I could do without the K-pop.
Me too. Okay, if before the Big Bang there was no space and no time, what was there? What about the beginning of the universe from the religious point of view? God created everything. Fine. Where was he before? What caused the Big Bang to happen in the first place? Or what made God decide to snap his fingers or wiggle his nose or whatever he did to make everything happen? If you ask a physicist to explain what existed before the universe, they'll give you an answer about quantum foam, dark energy, or something just as bonkers as the Big Bang.
That's that tug of war between the scientific and the spiritual.
Yeah, and we're trying to even. It's like trying to talk about the fourth dimension when we live in a 3-dimension.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of theory involved.
Yeah, it's all theory.
Yep.
Because it's beyond our comprehension. And when you think about something that lives because we can mathematically put into effect that there is a place outside of time and space, and then beyond that. And if something that was alive were to exist outside of it, then that being can in fact do things like create our universe.
Agreed.
Ask a theologian what existed before God created the universe, and you'll get an answer equally as confusing. But what does make sense is that the universe was just sitting there dormant. Then someone somewhere decided to boot up a program. And in that program, our program, are all the laws of the universe. Electromagnetism and gravitational force are written into the program. The speed of light gets a value. There's code for Planck's constants of mass, speed, and time. Avogadro's number is in there, along with a bunch of other rules that govern the behavior of everything that exists, all part of our program. Even consciousness itself is part of our simulation. If you've never heard of simulation theory, then this might sound far-fetched, but some of the world's most respected scientists, technologists, and philosophers believe that it is more likely than not that we are living in an artificial reality. So, how do we prove it?
I know I am matter, but I do not think I am a simulation. Even games that simulate hunger do not make the player hungry.
Okay, here's the thing though. You are controlling that simulation. You are controlling simulation on it. If you were the simulation, you would be hungry.
So it's relative to where you are in
Yeah,
space.
yeah.
What part?
When you're outside controlling the simulation, like let's say you're playing a game, you are in fact quote unquote the god being on there. You could
Just
turn
think
it
about
on.
every time CJ dies in GTA.
Yeah. Well, if you are outside, it's like if you're outside of that environment, then you are you could turn it off and on at any time. That's the whole point of it. He's seeing himself outside of it. Yeah, but you're not the actual simulation. You're what those things. Imagine in that game like GTA, those people inside those NPCs, you're one of those. Then yeah, you will feel pain, you will feel hunger, all of it. So yes.
Essentially, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, because we're parts of the program.
And we're right now seeing what GPT-4 is coming out on there. So imagine all the advancements on it. Who's to say that 50 or 100 years from now, yeah, we would have this AI will have the technology to create an actual simulation. Henceforth, maybe they already did, and we are inside that simulation already, reliving the past, or we're not even real. This is just a computer right now running
Right.
a simulation from a that technically it's now a version of our library of what Earth was. This is what Earth was in real time. Now forget about book. What actually would probably be better instead of having books, something you could boot up and see the world
Yeah.
move.
See the actual life
Hmm.
in progress during snapshots of history or snapshots of time, and that's actually what we're experiencing,
Mm.
what we're a part of.
Whoa.
We're like containers.
Yeah.
It's like spinning up a container in a VM.
Hmm.
Yeah.
You could say we are God's simulation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we live in an artificial reality, it would make sense for there to be occasional glitches. Philip K. Dick is one of the most influential science fiction writers of all time. Movies based on his books include Blade Runner, Total Recall, Minority Report,
Yes.
The Adjustment Bureau, and plenty of others. He believed there are many universes,
All
and
great.
sometimes those other realities bleed into
great.
ours. He claimed to have visions of this, and even wrote stories like The Man in the High Castle based on these visions.
Awesome show
That in
on
fact
Amazon.
plural realities did exist superimposed onto one another like so many film transparencies.
One way other realities blend into ours could be the Mandela effect. The Mandela effect is when a large number of people have memories of
Yes.
events that don't match reality.
Yeah. This is very, very real.
Yeah, this is crazy. Like, well, they didn't say that the Hadron Collider, when they turned on, it actually spun us into a different alternate dimension, reality.
Yes, that was a big theory. The first concern that I saw was that the world was going, or the universe was going to fold in on itself. And then the second was that it was actually going to cause some kind of time distortion that would bend time and actually fold us into another reality.
I will believe it. Seeing what I'm seeing now. I don't belong in this reality. Send me to another one. I think it's time to turn it on again. Turn it on again, please.
Yeah, reboot this.
Yes. Yes.
This is called the Mandela effect because millions of people specifically remember Nelson Mandela died in prison. He didn't.
I didn't,
People
though.
remember his wife walking beside his casket in a funeral procession that was on television for 2 hours that day.
I
This
don't
never
remember that.
happened. Or the Berenstain Bears, which people insist were always called the Berenstein Bears.
Nope.
People remember the tycoon from Monopoly having a monocle that he never had.
Yeah,
What was Darth Vader famous for saying?
Luke, I am your father.
Nope, he never said that.
What?
What about Stouffer's stovetop stuffing?
Best part of Thanksgiving.
No, it isn't, because there's no such product. Stovetop is made by Kraft.
No.
The evil queen from Snow White who looked into her mirror and said,
Mirror, mirror on the wall.
Yeah.
nope.
Magic mirror on the wall. Who is the fairest one of all?
Yep.
My reality is shattered.
People remember Febreze being spelled with 2 E's. People remember Jiffy peanut butter, but there's no such thing.
Really?
And there are a lot more.
Wait,
I remember.
Personally,
Wait, what?
I remember there being a Jiffy peanut butter. You better look that shit up. I'm more than positive. I'm 100% positive there's a Jiffy peanut butter. You better put. What the hell is he talking about? There's no Jiffy peanut butter. I am 100% positive about that. What the hell is he talking about? What the hell is he talking about?
What universe are we in, bro?
Oh, it's Jif peanut butter.
Yeah,
Wait,
it's
I don't
Jif.
remember. Not Jiffy. What?
So even people who've asked Google before, when did they change Jiffy peanut butter to Jif? When did it has always been Jif since our company was founded in 1958.
I don't remember. No, I don't remember. I don't remember. No,
That's from their website. This is a lie.
It's gotta be. I think they're messing with us, man.
This is their corporate website. They're trolling, bro.
It has to be. I remember Jiffy peanut butter. I swear to God.
There's Jiffy corn mix. What?
No, peanut butter, man. Not Jif. Not Jif. I don't even remember a Jif peanut butter, to be completely honest.
Man, Mark Brooks is. I think Mark is like Agent Smith, bro.
Yeah, I think he is. He's an NPC.
He's an NPC. He's got to be. He's keeping us here. There was Jiffy when we were kids.
I am 100% sure there was a Jiffy peanut butter. I am 100% sure there was a Jiffy peanut butter.
I was watching too many damn commercials during The Price is Right as a kid. All the commercials blend together in our little heads.
Is that what it is, maybe? I don't know,
That's
man.
probably what it is, man.
Now, Mandela in prison? No, I've never. No, he got out. He was. He got out and he won the election. He was president of. I remember that.
He was released. Yeah,
he was released. I don't remember him dying.
Yeah, I remember the speech. I remember his speech when he was released.
Yeah, I know his wife left him right after he left. That's a different story.
There was that part.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't have most of these false memories, but there are a few that get me. The Flintstones. There are 2 T's in the Flintstones.
Yeah, I don't remember
just
that at
one.
all.
And
Yes.
what about the Fruit of the Loom logo? I could swear it looks like this,
Yes.
but it doesn't. This is the actual logo.
Yes.
No
No.
cornucopia.
That's
Corn, you
no.
what now?
Basket.
Then just say basket for crying out loud.
And at the end of Moonraker, a terrible but excellent James Bond movie, I remember Jaws' girlfriend as having braces. I mean, I specifically remember it. She didn't have braces.
I mean, I've seen it, but I don't remember her or nothing else.
What?
I just can't get my brain to accept
are
it.
all lies.
That's the Mandela effect. So why do millions of people distinctly remember different things?
Glitch in a simulation.
Yep. Philip K. Dick also felt when we experienced deja vu, it's because something in our simulated universe changed and a new timeline branched off of the current one.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed.
Ever feel like you've lived a moment before?
Yeah.
That's because, according to Philip K. Dick and others, you have. Deja vu is the simulation correcting itself with new information. But skeptics can easily dismiss these theories. The human mind is terribly unreliable. They don't accept this as evidence. But we're not done yet. We live in a huge universe, 200 billion trillion stars. And even if life is rare, you'd think there'd be some evidence of it somewhere. This is Fermi's paradox. And according to the Drake equation, there should be over 1 million technologically advanced civilizations just in our galaxy. And on average, the nearest one should be just a few hundred light years away. But there's nothing, at least not that we can see. So where is everybody?
No,
Are we
not
really alone in
necessarily.
the universe, or does our
See, okay, but what's technologically advanced? Okay, sure, they could be technologically advanced, but that could be the steam engine. That could also be, advanced but not spacefaring.
Yeah.
Maybe they've been focusing on underwater on there. So that's why it's like, okay, there could be 1 million of them, but we barely go to the moon. So
Right. We're just now exploring the surface of Mars.
So exactly, and it's not
And
even
deep
us.
space.
It's not really us. So what's technologically advanced? And that's what I would say.
Yeah.
And look how long it took us just to get to and back, like just the data. So that part is like, even if we get any race that will get to a point where they can freely go and traverse through galaxies, that's AI. That's not even, they see us as little things. These are specialists because this is the Mountain Chat channel.
This is Mountain Chad channel, Mountain Chad takeover. You have to have a spatula when
That's
you're
right.
on the mic, bro.
All day. Come on now.
You don't watch the Mountain Chad
Yeah.
subjects? Man, come
Yeah,
on,
you need to follow Mountain Chat. What's going on?
Gotta follow Mountain Chad, man. Every video, spatula.
That's right. We got to make sure that we keep up with the chatster.
These are our takeover spatulas.
He'll appreciate it when he gets back.
our program only focus on us? And what about the physical rules that are in place? Max Tegmark, a cosmologist at MIT, said the strict laws of physics point to the possibility of a simulation. Putting a cap on the speed of light sure is a good way to keep your Sims from venturing out too far from home. Theoretical physicist James Gates thought simulation theory was crazy. Then he started studying quarks and electrons. He found error-correcting code buried deep inside the equations used to describe string theory.
So you're saying as you dig deeper, you find computer code writ in the fabric of the cosmos.
Into the equations that we want to use to describe the cosmos, yes.
Computer code.
Computer code, strings of bits of ones and zeros.
Dr. Gates has changed his mind about simulation theory. In 2017, a group of scientists at the University of Washington proved they can embed computer code into strands of DNA. Everything in nature is math. Look at the Fibonacci sequence. You get the Fibonacci sequence by adding two previous numbers in the sequence together. So 1 + 1 = 2, 2 + 1 = 3, 3 + 2 = 5, 5 + 3 = 8, and so on forever. You get the golden ratio, also called phi, by dividing two consecutive Fibonacci numbers. So the number 89 is a Fibonacci number. The next number in the sequence after 89 is 144. 144 divided by 89 is the golden ratio. It's about 1.618. We see Fibonacci numbers and the golden ratio everywhere. The number of petals on a flower is usually a Fibonacci number. Lilies have 3 petals, buttercups have 5, chicory has 21, and a daisy has 34. And the spacing of each petal is arranged in a circle according to the golden ratio. As trees grow, the number of branches they form is a Fibonacci number. And not just plants, animals too.
True.
The ratio of female to male honeybees in a colony is the golden ratio, 1.618. The human body conforms to the golden ratio too. Most of the body follows the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 5. 1 nose, 2 eyes, 3 limb segments, 5 fingers, 5 toes. The proportions of the body, like the length of your shoulder to your elbow, and from your elbow to your fingertips, that's the golden ratio. Even a DNA molecule measures 34 angstroms long by 21 angstroms wide. Fibonacci numbers and the golden ratio. From the spiral of seashells to the spiral of a galaxy and everything in between, Fibonacci numbers are everywhere. Now, some claim this is a coincidence, that humans look for patterns in chaos because that's what we're programmed to do.
What we're programmed to do.
And isn't that interesting? By trying to debunk simulation theory, they actually end up proving it. No matter what we study, whether it's something the size of a galaxy or as small as an...
Thoughts?
Well, that just proves that there is intelligent design behind everything.
Yes,
For me,
I get it.
which uh, is the whole thing. That's why that's was being used as for also for some as why there's a god. There's or a supreme being or something smart about it. So for me, that's what I see. I don't see I see an intelligent design on everything, which is what now of course DNA at its base is binary code. We're all binary code. So yeah, it's ones and zeros. The electrical signals that our brain sends out is ones and zeros. The same way our computer systems, send out information.
Yeah,
So
everything is math. Yeah,
yeah, everything is math. So it's for me, it's like we're living in God's simulation. Maybe everything from the beginning is all one simulation, anyways.
he's up there giggling when it's past our bedtime. We need to go to bed and we don't want to.
electron, everything in the universe seems to follow patterns and rules. In other words, a program. To simulate an entire universe, you'd obviously need more advanced technology than we have. But that doesn't mean we won't get there. Moore's law says that computing power doubles every 18 months, and this has held true for about 50 years. Now that is slowing down a little bit, but only because of physical limitations. Assuming we can learn to make microchips smaller, and there's no doubt that we will, it's predicted that artificial intelligence could surpass human intelligence within the next 100 years. As Elon Musk points out, when he was a kid, the world's most advanced video game was Pong, 2 rectangles on a screen. 40 years later, video game technology is barely distinguishable from reality.
Whoa.
He said that 6 years ago.
Unreal 5?
Even in that short time.
Yeah, Unreal Engine 5 will blow your mind.
What the fuck? I thought it was like a video.
So what I'm going to do is something I'll save for later. It might have been, I might have ran it on my stream. Did I run the Matrix trailer on my stream that was done in?
Oh, that was a while ago. I don't know. I haven't seen it on anything on yours, but I have seen that, and that was at the beginning of the Unreal 5 engine.
Yes,
and it was not that good. It was not this good. It was not this good at all.
Oh, you might not have seen the newest one then.
Oh, there's another one. I know you could play it. You could download it and
On
play
PS5?
it on PS5. Yeah, and then it's mainly just walking, but it'll blow your brain. And the Real Engine 5, you add that with AI, with maybe like a ChatGPT 4 with DALL-E to render everything in real time. Can you imagine the possibilities? You no longer need video programmers; he'll do it for you.
So what we'll do is we're going to take a brief intermission from this. We're going to do a quick jump over to Matrix Awakens trailer. And we're just going to let that run real quick.
This was a little while ago. This was like almost a year ago, right? More than a year ago?
Yeah, this is the one from a year ago. That was pretty Actually, I think it's all done in CGI. I don't think any of it's done in all done. I don't think any of it's real life.
I remember when there wasn't no Unreal Engine. It was just the game Unreal.
Yeah. That was the whole tech test for the engine. Was the game Unreal? Fitting that this is the Matrix showing close to life animation in a game that
I'm
is in
Thomas
fact a
Anderson.
simulation.
Like many of you, I work with computers. I like the freedom I feel outside the limitations of the real world. But computers are also mirrors, reflecting back who and what we are and the choices we make, the worlds we build. They also confront us with questions about why we want to choose this over that. Why we want to make X
It's
instead
so
of
in the
Y.
eyes.
Where do ideas of who we are and what we want even come from?
You take the red pill, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
This isn't real.
What is real?
How do you define real?
For instance, I'm not even sure why I'm here. I remember waking up and thinking that I'm supposed to come here. That it was important for me
See,
to
that
ask people,
broke the valley. That looks
how do we
fake.
know what is real?
Something about his gait, the way he was walking.
Yeah.
I'm Keanu Reeves. Over
Yeah, he
20 years ago, I first
his
played the
face.
character Thomas Anderson in the Matrix trilogy. Those
Nice.
films pioneered digital cinema with shots like bullet time. Back
Yeah,
then,
I don't
we
think this is
talked a
real.
lot about
Yeah, it's
where
not
the
real.
digital age might take cinema
It's not movie footage
in an industry
mixed
where
in.
actors
It's all
tried to
animated.
remain
Yeah, but it looks good. I mean, his face is
We
not.
wondered about digital
Now, see, that
faces
looks
could
awesome.
become immortal.
Hi, I'm Carrie Ann Moss, and I played Trinity in the Matrix films.
She looks
20
so
years
old.
ago, we asked ourselves how
She
long
does.
it would
Definitely,
be
yeah, this is not
before
her,
faces and
her.
bodies could be changed
But it's still
as quickly
good.
as we change clothes.
We wondered, what would identity mean
Yeah,
in a
something about the way the
completely
character walks.
digital world?
And what would reality mean when a world we can build feels as real as our own?
What just happened?
My spatula smells like jalapenos.
What they wanted. They said they were fine.
I
with
clean mine, so
theoretical mumbo
it doesn't
jumbo,
smell like it.
but
It's just a
they
rubber.
needed some sexy action.
Who said?
The marketing people.
Marketing? I thought we were supposed to have total creative control.
Welcome to the Matrix.
Exactly right from the movie.
You still got it.
Like riding a bike, they say.
I sometimes miss this version of us.
Me too.
The hell are you doing back there?
Sorry, I was told this is a sim preparing me to fight the system.
Right on. You know about this?
It looks good, but it'll get better.
Yeah, well, there's a trailer here. This only 2 months ago from some highlights, and this is from. So I would like let me put this up and see what's the difference between. That was a year ago.
That was a year ago, so this one's 2 months ago.
Yeah, I got the 5.1 feature highlights from 2 months ago. Yeah, that's the one.
Mm-hmm.
So we can see the see if there's any big differences.
All right.
The latest release of Unreal Engine builds upon the groundbreaking feature set released in UE5 to add a new level of robustness, efficiency, and accessibility with the needs of different sectors in mind. Here are just some of the highlights of Unreal Engine 5.1. First up, we've laid the groundwork for Lumen, Nanite, and Virtual Shadow maps to support games and experiences running at 60 FPS on next-gen consoles and capable PCs. So fast-paced games and simulations can run without latency. Nanite has been updated with a programmable rasterizer to allow for material-driven animations and deformations via world position offset, as well as opacity masks. Here we're using it to animate leaves blowing in the wind on nanite-based foliage. In this release, we've continued to enhance tools for building massive open worlds. New hierarchical level of detail support for water rendering and streaming means you can create large water bodies with better performance and a smaller memory footprint. And here, we're using world partition with the newly supported large world coordinates, enabling us to create a massive open world without loss of precision. World partition also features better source control workflows, just one of the new features for improved developer efficiency, which also include virtual assets for faster and more efficient data syncing, pipeline state object caching for DX12, and on-demand shader compilation. Unreal Engine 5.1 sees significant improvements in performance and usability for in-camera VFX workflows that apply equally to the broadcast and live events space. Stage operators get a new dedicated in-camera VFX editor, tailored to their specific tasks such as light card placement and editing on in-display walls. It also provides access to new color correction tools.
What?
The virtual camera system is now more responsive and reliable and features an updated UI with a modern, camera-focused design. And adding an EXR or movie file to a level or sequencer.
Yeah, we're looking at studio level production.
Yeah.
So like that whole Matrix scene, you've got like the whole animation of them going down the road, and Neo looking over his shoulder and then seeing the bus explode behind him or whatever, or the car explode and impact and explode into the bus. That entire sequence is already rendered, and basically the director is just using the camera controls to scan through the scene as if you're in Neo's head looking around.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Is now just a matter of drag and drop from the content browser. Character animators have plenty to look forward to in this release. The machine learning deformer lets you generate high-fidelity approximations of deformation rigs from Maya that execute in real
Enjoy your tuna, man. I'll be eating some scrimps once we're done with the broadcast tonight.
time in UE.
Little podcast, good job.
On another
Good job, little podcast. That's what I'm talking about, man.
Stay healthy.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, that's definitely. I've been harping on him to use some of them. Get some tuna on him, some good omegas. Need that stuff, man.
Yep.
other front, Control Rig continues to expand toward fully procedural rigging. Now you can create a single Control Rig asset and use it for characters with different skeletal proportions and properties. Improvements to Sequencer include support for constraints, letting you quickly and easily create and animate relationships between any Control Rig or actor. For example, making a camera always follow a character, or keeping a character's hands on a steering wheel. Enhancements to the modeling toolset include new functions for geometry scripting, UV editor improvements to handle more complex assets, and a new pattern tool that lets you tile one or more selected meshes along a line, grid, or circle oriented on a movable 3D plane. Last but not least, MetaSounds now offers additional node types, support for various multi-channel output formats, and enhanced usability. We've also introduced Soundscape, a plugin for procedural ambient sound generation.
Oh, my surround sound is going berserk right now.
These are just some of the highlights of what's new in Unreal Engine 5.1.
Headsets.
You can
and
find out more on our What's
amazing.
New page, where you'll also find a link to download the release if you're a new user. Otherwise, it's available right from your Epic Games launcher. Enjoy!
When does the problem lies on the simulation sounding and being better than actual real life?
Yeah. Yeah. When do we hit that?
And I think, well, if you already are, the simulation's just getting better. It's all a matter of AI. Once AI goes into full effect, that's it. Everything is just, now it's just a matter of waiting. It's a wait game.
Yeah.
Video game engines have become even more realistic. Look at this footage from Unreal Engine 5.
When a world we can build feels as real
let
as
right
our own.
into it.
Imagine what games are going to look like in the next 6 years, or the next 60, or the next 6,000. But simulating an entire universe, how big of a computer will we need? Well, it's estimated that there are 10 to the power of 80 atoms in the universe. Let me put that on the screen just for fun. Okay, that's a lot. If each particle needs 128 bits to calculate its position and momentum, you're at 10 to the power of 83 bits. And that's just for data storage. We also need computing power to track what each of those particles is doing. If we say 2 floating point operations per second, or 2 flops per particle, we're at 2 times 10 to the 80th power flops. There aren't even words for these numbers. And this is the computing power for just the stuff in the universe. What about human intelligence?
Right.
The human brain can perform
But-
100 trillion calculations per second.
100 trillion. Right now, ChatGPT 4 is at to what? 4 trillion?
4.
Probably
more, but yes.
Well, the base is going to be 4 on a regular or what we have now. We haven't tapped into quantum computers yet.
No, we haven't.
This is not factoring quantum computers, which because so once the quantum computers goes live, that's everything he just said becomes null and void.
Is Watson quantum?
No, I don't think so. Like I know that. Well, there's some theoretical quantum computers that are being used, but they can only be used for small amounts of time, and they're to do complex on. So it's not, live. It's not actually something that's readily available because of heats and energy and stuff. But once that threshold gets done and over with,
So, yes, actually, Watson is.
and what's the computing power of that? Like, what?
So, interact with a quantum processor. So, the quantum. So, yeah, Watson is a product of the IBM Quantum Lab. 5-qubit quantum processor.
Ooh, I didn't know they were already in multiple qubits. That's
and matching simulator. There's a lot about Watson out here. I'm not even going to go into. But yeah.
Well, we may be maybe closer than we think.
Yeah. Yeah, and cooling is really just the biggest issue right now, I bet.
Yep.
Because you're not going to reach those levels of processing speed if you don't have proper cooling mechanisms. That energy's got to go somewhere. All right, let's continue.
Or 100 teraflops. Multiplied by billions of people, the numbers are ridiculous. To power all of this, the simulation would need access to multiple Dyson spheres, the megastructures that capture 100% of the energy of a star. Or the simulation would have to harness the energy from black holes. This is why famous physicists like Dr. Michio Kaku are not on board with simulation theory. He claims that simulating a universe is not scientifically possible. The only computer capable of simulating a universe is the universe itself. Now, at first glance, this makes sense. But with all due respect to Dr. Kaku, that's not how simulations work. When you're playing a 3D video game, the entire game world isn't rendered. Instead, the game engine only calculates what the player can see and interact with at that specific moment. If we are living in a simulation, then it would make sense that the creators of the simulation would use a similar technique. And wouldn't it be interesting if there was evidence that this is exactly what happens?
Well, wait a minute. Do we have proof? Sweet fancy Moses!
All right, pause for a second. Redacting previous statement. Watson is a classical computer pattern.
Okay.
As of 2017, they had 2 new quantum computing platforms that they were working on, both of which far exceeded the capabilities of Watson.
Yeah, Google has their own their own quantum computer. It's not the one that replicated like stuff. Like I'm trying to find it, find a little bit about it. But Google has their own quantum computer.
That wasn't the one the guy was. No, that was the AI the guy was talking to, and he blew the whistle. And
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that's a different one.
That was the chat AI.
Yeah.
IBM's first prototype commercial processor holds 17 qubits and leverages significant materials, device, and architecture improvements to make it the most powerful quantum computing processor created to date. And this was as of 2017. So yeah, 2016 was when the quantum lab really kicked off. 2017, the two new platforms the platforms at that point in time had eclipsed Watson, and that's where we
Wow.
are. So Watson's just a kid's toy now. You can get a Watson and a calculator.
Can you imagine? Oh, that old quantum computer. It's going retail tomorrow.
The kids are playing with that at COSI now.
Yeah, that's a Walmart on the clearance aisle.
Yeah, it's a museum piece at this point.
Wow. Can you imagine? 2030. By 2030, it's everything's going to be wild. It's
This machine was beasting people at chess and Jeopardy, and now it's bodying people at Jeopardy, and now we turn around and it's been eclipsed.
Yeah. By 2030, I'll be changing my legs to some bionic ones. Fuck it.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, I've already got my my shoulder on layaway.
Let's go.
My robo shoulder.
Supporters of simulation theory often point to video games as a way to explain, if not prove, that our reality is artificial. In a video game, the only data that is rendered is what the player sees or interacts with. If you're playing a video game and there's a car or building a mile away, that entire object isn't rendered. The game engine only renders the bare minimum of information to make the object look real. A distant building is rendered as just a few pixels, not that complicated.
Not there,
as you
so
get
you can
closer,
see it.
the engine renders more details, but still, it's just a facade. The engine doesn't bother calculating what's inside the building until you actually go in. The game engine always knows how much data to send you and doesn't bother with anything else. If we live in a simulation, it would make sense that our reality is rendered the same way. And we could test this.
Wait, well, what do you mean we can test this?
Specifically, we can use the double slit experiment. Here's how it goes. If we
Yeah,
fire
this is
particles
awesome.
in a straight line at a screen, after passing through a single slit, we would expect to see this clumping pattern on the screen. If we try this with a wave, we expect to see a pattern like this, where particles are most dense in the middle of the screen but radiate outward, similar to the clumping pattern. When we add a second slit, it starts to get fun. When the waves pass through the double slit, each slit creates its own wave. When those waves intersect, they cancel each other out. That creates a pattern like this. It's called an interference pattern. So, particles passing through two slits create clumping patterns. Waves through two slits creates an interference pattern. Make sense?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Good. If we fire electrons through the slit, we see the clumping pattern as expected. An electron has mass, so it's a tiny bit of matter. So if we fire electrons through two slits, we should see two clumps. But we don't. We see the wave interference pattern. This shouldn't be happening. What's going on here? For years, scientists assumed that the electrons were colliding with each other, causing the wave pattern. But in the 60s, the experiment was modified so that only one electron at a time was fired through the slits. There was no way the electrons could interact with each other, yet we still see an interference pattern. Scientists wanted to see what was causing this, so they added a detector to observe electrons as they pass through the slits. That's when things go from weird to paranormal. As soon as the detectors were installed, the interference pattern went away and the clumping pattern returned. Take the detectors away and the wave interference pattern is back.
But that's a different result to what we had earlier.
The detector
So here's the last bit of sneakiness that we can play.
was they were bouncing from the detector back into because atoms and science. There you go. I just explained
There it
it.
is.
There you go. I just explained it. Where's my Nobel Peace Prize?
You need a bow tie first, bud. You got to step up your game.
Okay, I'll get my bow tie soon. I already
Yeah,
explained
this is one of those principles that I've looked at for a long time and known about for a long time, and it still just makes my brain hurt.
But didn't get this debunked or somebody explain the reason why? What changed? Because of at a subatomic level, having the detector there changes the area.
Is that what happens? I don't know.
Something that's what he's saying. Something like that, because we're talking about things at an atomic level.
So what's seen, and we'll hear it here in just a second, but what's observed is that when you immediately observe it,
Yeah.
it appears differently than when it's not observed, equating to us not seeing what's
Yeah,
there
and
until
but there was somebody, I forgot what. Probably, I'm gonna look it up for another day. But I know that supposedly the detector there actually changed the at a subatomic level because how it detects, which has caused that whole thing. So it's now I don't know science, but I don't. This is stuff that's above me, man. I'm just like, okay, I take everything as same grain of salt. I'm like, okay, that sounds about right. Oh, that still
we,
sounds about right. Like, I don't
we only
know.
we only play physicists on theoretical physicists on podcasts.
Yes, this is stuff that needed to be like Neil deGrasse Tyson level. You need to be Elon Musk to understand this stuff.
Yep.
Which is why I hate them so much.
Big brain guys.
Yeah, I'm interested in it, and I can't wrap my head around it, and I don't have enough time in my life to sit down and just read and understand this. It'll be great to just, for me anyways. For some people it's not, but for me it'd be great to just sit down and just learn this stuff or as much as I can.
I've got a video with a short with Michio Kaku, the guy that rolls with Neil deGrasse Tyson and Elon and
yeah, he's been Neil deGrasse. They've both been on the same. Neil deGrasse has been here, and him been on the Neil deGrasse Tyson podcast. His podcast is amazing. It'll
awesome.
make your head hurt.
I think the interview I have with him is from the early days of the podcast.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it's like 6 minutes, 6-7 minutes. We'll watch that here in just a few after the next video. But let us continue.
Surely now, we're going to get to grips with it. Leave the detector there, but just very quietly go and unplug it. Don't let the atoms know that you're not spying on them. Run the experiment again. Now, if you can explain this using common sense and logic, do let me know, because there's a Nobel Prize for you.
It's as if the particles are aware they're being observed. Then physicist John Wheeler had an idea. He called it the delayed choice experiment. How it works is photons are projected through the double slit, but the detector is not activated until after they pass through the slit, but before they impact the screen. Photons were emitted as waves, passed through the slits as waves, but when the waves were observed before hitting the screen, they suddenly behaved like particles again. Still don't think there's an intelligence at work? Well, what Wheeler's experiment showed is that even though the electrons started as waves but behaved like particles after being observed, at the moment the decision to observe them was made, the electrons recorded themselves as having passed through the slits as particles. The electrons changed their state by going back in time.
I personally find that I gravitate more towards the information theoretic point of view and believing that the universe that I exist in is a very good, high-quality simulation.
Now, this experiment is happening on a table in a lab, a very short distance. So what happens when we observe light coming from vast distances? Like, say, a galaxy 100 million light years away. If light from a distant galaxy is projected through the double slit, it creates the wave interference pattern. But if we push those photons through a measuring apparatus to observe them, the wave again collapses all the way back to its source. This is called retrocausality. Simply by choosing to observe the photons this way, they reach back through time 100 million years and alter their state on the other side of the galaxy. But like a video game engine, it only does this if we're looking. Even though our universe is full of galaxies, those galaxies may not actually be there. If we're living in a simulation, then stars and galaxies could simply be projections, and only when we get up close would those projections become more detailed. This is an excellent way to save computational resources. And because we're stuck with the hard limit of the speed of light, getting to far off places is really difficult. Limiting the speed of light is a useful rule to have in place. Quantum mechanics like the double slit
measuring the distance?
No, the hard limit on there is so this is actually that you could it's detailed, it's been talked about mathematically wise. There shouldn't be a hard limit to the speed of light. That part doesn't make sense math wise. It's almost like something that was imposed just between mass, between the universe and how big it is on it, that there shouldn't be a a hard stop there just because of how vast it is, because everything is done by the laws of physics. Everything is done by is comprised to where it is an infinite universe. Then
Doesn't
shouldn't.
have it.
Yes, on Earth we have a limit, gravity, all this stuff on it, but it's within bounds.
It's within the bounds of what, of what,
Exactly.
of what what Earth's can support, what our atmosphere can
Mhm.
support,
But outside there's
and what physics has taught us about our condition here.
exactly. Man,
All right, nerd.
I sometimes I do get my little so that doesn't make sense. That he's right about that. That part, it's like
It's a little sketch.
okay, yeah, why?
Experiment and quantum entanglement only makes sense if there's a program at work, because only the program can ignore the laws of physics and ignore the concept of time itself.
There is no spoon, but there's
A
a spatula
convenient
though.
case for simulation theory is you can't disprove it. The Big Bang, that was the simulation booting up. We haven't found aliens, they're not in the simulation. How come UFOs seem to violate the laws of physics? Well, because they're programs operated by the simulation creators. They don't have to follow the laws of physics.
Yeah, but who created the simulation?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? When you think of the simulation creator as an omniscient intelligence who exists outside of our understanding of space and time, it sounds an awful lot like you're describing God.
There we go.
And just like you can't prove we're not in a simulation, you can't prove there is no God. If something miraculous happens or something horrible happens, you can say it's part of the simulation just as easily as you can say it's part of God's plan. Something I find very interesting is that many believers of simulation theory are fierce atheists. They dismiss the idea of God as corny superstition. And there are plenty of devoutly religious people who dismiss provable science like evolution and the age of the earth. People on the religious side say that if there is no God and life is just a simulation, then nothing matters. Without God to guide us and sometimes punish us, depending on what you believe, our actions don't have consequences.
True.
I disagree. Even if we don't live in base reality, we still live in our reality, and our actions here do have consequences. As for what happens after we die, simulation or not, nobody really knows. Both sides argue that faith and science are not compatible. Isn't this hypocritical? Whether you believe in God or you believe in simulation theory, the real question is, what's the difference? Thank you so much.
And there's that.
Yeah. So what's the difference between a omnipresent being who lives on the 11th dimension that could create everything and knows everything, and me saying God? What's the difference? And now the whole point of, well, if there's no God, nothing matters. Well, technically, it's not that it doesn't matter. It's like there's no point of existence. And now there's always consequences, but the consequences don't matter.
Right.
Only because we have finite lives, so it doesn't really matter. So we die, okay. So without that's why. So I don't think he grasps the understanding of why we say without a God nothing matters, because I think he hit it. It doesn't. There's no the purpose. That it's more of a philosophical way of thinking that without a God, then there's no there's no meaning to life.
Yeah. The purpose of free will, the purpose of creation. Yeah, it voids itself at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Our next one up is why you're probably not a simulation.
All right, so now we're going back to not a simulation. Let's go
Yes.
back, and now I could breathe a little easier knowing that I'm not in a simulation.
That's right. That's right. We want our audience to have an understanding,
Yeah,
but not a fear. All right.
That's
We don't
right.
want you to be scared. We don't want to scare you guys away before.
That's right. The AI will take over. So that's all you need to be afraid about. It's just the AI taking over.
Yeah. You already know that part.
Yeah, that's actually going to happen. So, but
That's
whether or
happen.
not, whether or not you're in a simulation, don't worry about that.
Forget this part. The AI is going to rule your life.
Yeah, it will completely.
If you assume any rate of improvement at all, then the games will become indistinguishable from reality.
Simulation technology is getting better and better.
What I'm going to try and do is convince you you're a simulation and that physics can prove it.
1 in a zillion, you're the real universe, and 999 gazillion to 1 that
you're a simulation.
That convinces
starts to seem much more likely that I'm simulated. There are so many more simulated beings. The odds are tiny that I would be unsimulated.
Well, maybe we're in a simulation right now.
If we are, plug me out now and throw me to the bed of water.
Humanity has long obsessed over what is real. Whether it be the shadows on Plato's cave or the butterfly dream of Zhuang Zhou, we've often toyed with the idea that our senses might be deceiving us. But these philosophical musings, really more than intellectual titillation, have now evolved into a pointed assault on our very concept of reality, thanks to the modern computing era.
This isn't real. What is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what
How
you can
young they
feel,
look.
what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is
He looks
simply
really good. He got really
electrical
fat
signals
there.
interpreted by your brain.
Yeah, they do.
In its latest incarnation, now deftly dressed as a scientific argument, proponents suggest that our reality may be nothing more than a computer simulation, that what we call the universe is, in fact, merely a computer program running within some inaccessible reality above us. You've been living in a dream world. It was philosopher Nick Bostrom who formalized the so-called simulation argument in 2003, around the same time that the Matrix sequels were released. Bostrom suggested that one of 3 hypotheses must be true, 3 doors of possibility. Door 1 is that we will never be able to simulate conscious beings on a computer. Perhaps we somehow destroy ourselves before that transpires. Not the most attractive option. Door 2, we can simulate reality, but for some reason, we just never choose to. This is perhaps the least plausible option. Humanity has never refrained from utilizing the technology at its disposal. Door 3, we will one day simulate reality, and thus we should consider the possibility that we are ourselves simulated. What differentiates the simulation hypothesis from the earlier philosophical skepticism of Plato and others is that this isn't just some cute philosophical idea. This is a practical goal for many computer scientists today. And you only need to look at the computer game industry to see why. In 1972, one of our best simulations of reality would be what we would now consider an extremely crude depiction of a table tennis game.
51 years
Today,
ago.
computer
Notice any themes?
50. Which thing?
Oh, you went muted.
Am I muted?
Oh, I can hear you now.
Okay.
Mike wasn't picking up.
Sorry, what was you were saying that so it's only 51 years ago.
Yeah.
It wasn't that long ago.
Graphics, look at the, like we just saw, with the Matrix and Unreal Engine 5 and
yeah.
This woman's face here, she's probably from one of the most current video game engines.
Computer games approach photorealistic quality with ray tracing and sophisticated physics engines. And so, in another few decades, these advances in computer graphics and immersion technology could become so advanced that we wouldn't be able to tell the difference between reality and a game. Maybe we wouldn't want to. The idea of a simulated reality was, of course, popularized in the Matrix films from 1999 to 2003. But it has recently resurfaced into public discourse and media headlines, thanks to, in no small part, the tech billionaire Elon Musk. In interviews, Elon Musk has shared his belief that the probability that we are not living in a simulation is 1 in billions, a near certainty.
The odds that we're in base reality is 1 in billions.
Everything's a 50-50 chance.
Now, the credibility and authority that Elon Musk's name carries in the field of technology is enough to persuade many bystanders that he is likely right, that our reality is nothing more than a simulation. This reasoning can be summarized as follows. As computer games advance in sophistication, we will eventually be capable of simulating conscious beings inside computers, and could indeed launch billions of such simulations containing trillions of conscious entities. And so, against this backdrop of vast numbers of simulated intelligences, the chances are that you were born as a simulated consciousness rather than as a real one. When proponents describe that argument, it sounds very convincing. After all, there's no doubt that at the present day, computer games are indeed increasing in sophistication. And if we could one day simulate a reality, then why would we stop at 1? Why wouldn't we do billions of the things? So, does this effectively prove that we are indeed living in a simulation?
And that would go back to like what Mark said before. So we were doing billions of these things. So you got the future people doing a way back when historical simulation, and they're actually spinning up billions of animals and humans and trees and all of these different processes.
Yeah, they're spinning up. We could already spin up. We could technically already do that. I could spin up multiple virtual private clients right now, all of them running a not as good, whatever the best simulated game out there, and had them all run.
It's like running multiple Warcraft servers on a private, multiple Warcraft realms
on a private server.
Private server.
Yeah, so we could already do that. Amazon with just Amazon Web Services, we could do that. Now, is it going to be this right now? But we can on a smaller scale because we don't,
Yep.
And that's just now. Imagine what 20 years will look like.
Yeah. Well, look at what we're doing. We can spin up entire enterprises and all enterprise functionality in a matter of minutes.
Yeah.
An entire business and the entire back-end business supporting functionality.
And have it actually run on a serverless background, though we don't even have to worry about it. It'll run itself.
Mm-hmm.
Are you nothing more than a piece of computer code? And what does it mean for our lives if that is true?
Right now, we're inside a computer program.
Is it really so hard to believe?
When we first encountered the simulation hypothesis, many of us might feel an initial sense of despair. Our entire lives are nothing more than lines of code running on a computer. It means that we're all impotent. Nothing we really do matters. Irrespective of how great our accomplishments are, none of them occurred in the real world.
Right.
But, on the other hand, one might question whether that state of affairs is really any different from a non-simulated reality.
But
the universe is billions of years old, and will...
I wouldn't I'd be relieved. Oh, thank God. You know how many people who are just losers who be like, woo, this ain't real. I'm not a real loser.
I don't got to worry about nothing now.
Yeah. The only people that will suck will be like people like Elon Musk going, wait, you mean I'm not important? Nope.
Not at all.
So
not at all. You matter no more than the guy that's happy that nothing matters.
Right. I think there'll be a lot of people who will be like in despair. I wouldn't. I'd be like, this is some cool stuff. I'm like, is there any way to hack into this? Because
right.
I want to have
a way to exploit it.
Yeah, I'd be like, I need a six pack right now. I mean, seriously, I need a six pack immediately. I want guns. I want to look like Arnold. Can I get can I get a reskin and look at have the Arnold body when he Mr. Olympia? Where do I
Agreed.
where's that package?
Agreed.
I would like hey, also somebody boot up Cyberpunk 2077. It's time to get real. Right? I think I'll just be like, it's time to have some fun.
I mean, if we're looking at the simulate, so you know what? That's another question too. If we're looking at the simulation, why isn't it moving faster? Or is that because again we're just spun up for the purposes of this moment in time?
What there's no okay, so you know
I want
how
my robot arms.
the thing is you're seeing it. It's like a game. If you're actually going on super fast mode on there, the NPCs don't know that they're going super fast mode. Only the person outside. So all of existence that as we know it, it's probably happened. Even this conversation in a simulation, um, is happening in a fraction of minutes. They're just spinning up because they're trying to find to see, to a certain point, which
Yep.
should be our apocalypse, to see what would happen. So they're just refactoring everything over and over again to see what will be the end result or something. Calculations. So all this technically, this is actually happening in milliseconds right now.
Exactly.
Only you think it's actually it's going slow.
Exactly. We think the past 17 seconds has gone by as you were explaining that. It was sheer microseconds.
Mm-hmm. But the whole 1,000 years is 1 year. 1 year is 1,000 years. The whole God's perception of time.
Yeah.
Time is
exactly like the explanation I gave, where if on the 24-hour clock we're like at 11:58 and 59 seconds of existence on the 24-hour. Yeah. Or excuse me, 23 hours, 23:58 and 59 split seconds, tenths of a second.
Persist for trillions more. We occupy such an insignificant speck of existence that aren't we already impotent? If the universe is simulated, then at the finest level of detail, all we would find would be information, ones and zeros. But ultimately, even in a natural universe, the fundamental building blocks might indeed just be information too. Are these ideas really so different? Does it really matter if we're simulated at all? I think many people in recent years have made that case quite persuasively, but I think there are still fundamental differences between these two ideas that make them quite distinct. First off, consider this. If you are simulated, then your memories may very well be simulated too. Your childhood, your friendships, your mistakes, your successes, and even the ones you love would be nothing more than an implanted memory. Even your age could be just an illusion. You could have been created just last year, deceived into thinking you had experiences that you'd never experienced. Indeed, you may have come into existence just a few moments ago, ironically born to watch a YouTube video about how your life may be nothing more than an illusion. Almost like an orientation boot camp to prepare you for your new simulated existence.
All right.
A second disturbing possibility is that almost no one you've ever met is even conscious. They're just NPCs populating the program, simulacra emulating intelligent conversations, but not truly comprehending anything around them. René Descartes would say that all you can be sure of is that you think, therefore you exist, but everything else is up for grabs.
Yep.
Even me. Now, these possibilities are technically true in a natural universe as well, but they become far more elaborate enterprises to orchestrate, whereas in a simulated reality, it's as simple as a few lines of code. And when it comes to your code, who you are, a third possibility is that you are not unique. This may be the second time your program has been run, or the third, or the fourth, or the millionth. Each time the memories are wiped, the initial conditions reset and the simulation started once again. This is actually something we do all the time in physics simulations. There is an inherent randomness to events and initial conditions, and slight changes can lead to complex differences down the road, like the butterfly effect. And so, to explore these, we often perturb the simulations just slightly and repeat, which makes you wonder how many times you have lived this life, ended up here, watching this video. Digital reincarnation. I think then there are some reasons why one could argue that it really does matter if our existence is nothing more than a simulation. While the kind of skeptical questions I've posed here certainly predate the simulation concept, the simulation idea makes them more accessible, more straightforward to conceive of in their execution. Ultimately, whether this disturbs you or not is going to be a personal question, and it's not going to be one that we all agree upon. If we accept Elon Musk's 1,000,000,000 probability, much of humanity's future might be spent wrestling with what it means to be simulated. But do other thought leaders agree with this grim assessment? What counter-arguments to the simulation hypothesis might exist?
Here we go. Counter-arguments.
Over the last few years, physicists have pushed back against the simulation hypothesis from a few different angles. At the most extreme end, there are some who argue that scientists should not even waste their time thinking about this, as this isn't really science.
I'm curious not so much about the question of whether we're a simulation, but I actually am very interested in why so many people think it's an interesting question.
She's a theoretical
physicist.
physicist.
Is that there's no experiment that we could ever design that
your
could
theory is a
100%
theory.
prove that we are not living in a simulation.
Come on.
And therefore the idea is unfalsifiable.
She said, I'm not worried about it. I'm more worried about why you think it's a thing.
It's like I'm worried about why you're a theoretical physicist. I'm worried about everything you do is the same thing as saying, "What if?"
So now I wonder what her specialization theory or theory of specialization is, or whatever the hell.
Yeah.
What the hell her specialty is?
Theoretical physicists, everything is theory. Everything. There's nothing concrete. They're just. I mean, it's the same thing.
That's
It's
the
like
whole reason why you do that sort of thing instead of a job that pays good money.
yeah. It's like whatever. It's like it's
You're a research scientist for your entire life.
Yeah.
Viable and thus leaves the arena of traditional science. Now, personally, I can accept that this might not be how we would define science in the traditional sense, but nevertheless, I think the idea is interesting to scientists because it concerns the very fundamental nature of the universe, of our reality, and those are questions that we care about deeply. Now, I want to add that not all scientists agree that the idea is untestable, and some are even attempting to design experiments to test the simulation hypothesis. However, it is important to distinguish between testing whether the universe is built upon the principles of computation, but is not a simulation, versus testing whether the universe is indeed a simulation on someone's computer. Those are different to each other. It is quite possible that the laws of computation are somehow embedded within nature, and yet everything we see around us is not a simulation. A basic premise behind much of the simulation experimental concepts is that the simulation we inhabit cannot be perfect. Errors will be present, either by mistake of the coder or just because of the finite computational power of the creator. Perhaps then, if we zoom in to the fine detailed structure of matter and energy, we would uncover some errors in the code, digital structure, approximations betraying its falseness. After all, if you wanted to simulate the entire universe to exact precision, then you would need a computer that was the mass of the universe. However, for me, there is a big problem with this approach, and that's that the simulators don't have to simulate the entire universe.
Right.
They only have to simulate our perceptions of it. Consider an open world computer game with a vast landscape and different regions to explore. The game does not render the entire universe, the entire landscape to the highest degree of fidelity in each moment. Rather, it just generates what the player can see in each instant.
Imagine having a really vivid dream, or remember having
Yeah, that's one thing about like dreaming. What is dreaming? Why do we dream? Why are some so vivid? And so fantastic.
Yes.
Are we tapping into another reality in some sense, to an
Another
actual
verse.
another existence?
Yep.
It's not even another. It's just another complete realm of existence. I mean, that's just my thing. I love dreaming. Love dreams.
And so when we pull out our microscopes and look deep into an object's composition, perhaps even down to the subatomic level, it is only in those moments that the simulators need to recreate the fine structure, a far less taxing enterprise. And taking this idea a little bit further, we can say that the simulators don't even need to simulate the subatomic particles themselves. They only need to simulate our perception of them, what our eyes see, what our brain interprets. And so in this way, the simulators have a far easier task at hand. And yet more, they might have vastly richer computational resources at their disposal than we can possibly imagine. And finally, even if an error does creep in occasionally, the simulator doesn't have to invoke deja vu. They could of course just pull the clock back, reload the last save game, and correct the bug such that you never remember that you saw it. Together then, I just don't buy the idea that we should expect errors in the code. No matter what we do, we will always be rats in the maze. If physics can't save us from simulated doom, then what about logic? Well, friend of the channel Professor Sean Carroll pointed out an interesting contradiction in the simulation argument that might just save us. And it goes like this. If simulated realities are possible, then the simulations could themselves launch their own simulations, and those could launch more, and so on and so forth, forming a kind of Inception-style hierarchy of reality. Furthermore, if we're simulated, then that would mean that the first two possibilities of Bostrom's trilemma were clearly false. In other words, yes, it is possible to simulate conscious beings, and yes, civilizations sometimes choose to do so. Now here comes the problem. Given the hierarchical structure of reality which fans ever wider and wider, it turns out that most of the civilizations will end up living in this bottom level of reality. Now, computational resources and capabilities have to diminish with each level. And so the lowest level would represent a level for which it was impossible to ever build a computer capable of simulating reality.
Yeah, so we're definitely not seeing that landscape beyond the horizon of our current skyline. It's not processing that until we go to Leaf Town.
Well, because we can't see that far.
We can't observe we can't observe the
Yeah.
matter that's actually there.
Yeah, so we can't, so it can't come, so it doesn't, So we got that built-in function, or that we can't see, can only see so far.
Okay, so did you catch that? There's the contradiction. If the simulation argument is true and there's this hierarchy of realities, then we most likely live at the bottom level of reality where it's not possible to simulate reality.
But wouldn't our own simulations actually be the lowest level? I mean, based on the hierarchy alone.
Yeah. The simulation that we're, well, I guess we are not running that level of, we are the lowest because we're not running
that level of computational
until the AI becomes, and then it starts running. So then if AI in our lifetime, here it is. If AI in our lifetime becomes so good that it can create it, doesn't that automatically then means that, oh shit, all of it is real? Like, let's say it's in 20 years AI can actually create what he's saying, then we just proved it's like, okay, we're a goddamn, this is a program. This is a program.
The next phase is if we are the actual ones that we are writing into history as being the ones that gain self-awareness, and it's not our AI or robot companions, it's us realizing that we are in the simulation.
Yeah, so and then we wake up. Maybe that's the test, that's the game. Can you imagine? That's the game. We come.
The
So
Turing test or whatever the newer
yeah.
vision of it is actually
So
for us.
and then once we actually can create our own, we wake up. We're like, all right, and then there's applause. We're all getting applauded. Hey, finally, he broke out of this. It's like what?
Truman Show style wake up.
Yeah, right. I feel dead inside.
And yet, the very premise of the argument is that it is possible to simulate reality, a contradiction. Carroll's contradiction is subtle and clever, but personally, I don't quite buy it. My take is that even if we do live in the bottom level of reality, and would thus never be able to simulate realities ourselves, it's not unreasonable that we would still consider this as a possibility. We would still come up with Bostrom's trilemma, and thus it would act to dissolve the contradiction. These lowest level realities might still be capable of creating rather impressive simulations, just not ones quite sophisticated enough to simulate conscious beings on a computer. Nevertheless, they might still consider this a reasonable possibility, given that they are themselves working on the precipice of that technology. And so, I don't agree that a contradiction necessarily exists here. A final counter-argument I highlight comes from a recent book by William Poundstone. This was recently discussed by Neil deGrasse Tyson during a Star Talk episode, who was quite convinced by it, and even had popular...
Neil?
Yes, he makes me want to like, okay, it's time to quit life. He's just, yeah, it's time to quit. Like
He's awesome. He's awesome. That other guy too, Kyle Hill. He's awesome too.
Yeah, like it's like, why are you guys so smart and I'm not? Why are you
They're
guys
awesome,
so much smarter than me?
This guy's making my brain hurt a little bit, but we're following the same themes here, but we're just looking at it from the other perspective. He's breaking it down really good.
Yeah, they're looking at it as we're geniuses, and we're looking at it as, duh, this sounds cool. Yeah, that's what it is.
Side tuber Carl Hill to suggest that Neil had solved the simulation argument. All that aside, I recommend picking up a copy of the book for yourself and reading it, making up your own mind on this, but for the sake of conciseness, I will provide here a brief summary of the counterargument. Go to the theatre or the movies one night and watch what is in effect a simulation of another world. When are they simulating? Most of the time, the movie takes place around the modern era, be it a thriller, a romance, horror, political drama, or a comedy. Sometimes, but not as often, it is set a few hundred years in the future, especially in science fiction. Likewise, a minority of movies are set a few hundred years in the past, such as period dramas or historical pieces. But it's rare that the story takes place thousands of years in the past or thousands of years in the future. Typically, the story focuses on the modern era more or less. Now, William Poundstone argues that the creators of these simulated realities would also prefer to generate simulations of more or less their modern era, not temporally distant ones. And so, if we imagine a civilization achieving computational supremacy and one that lasts for thousands of years beyond that achievement, simulation technology would be a normal tool of their society, like our smartphones are to us. And thus most of these simulations would be set in nearly concurrent times, eras when simulation technology was itself widespread. On that basis, the fact that we live in an era that does not possess widespread simulation technology...
So the complexity of simulation technology is just so commonplace that it's just a fact of life.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know.
I mean, look at the past 50 years. Look at where we're going in the next 10 years.
Yeah, it's just the rapid advancement is ridiculous. Like
wearable tech, man. I mean, we're a step away from our smartwatches getting smarter. We're a step away from wearable glasses that have everything built in with the heads up display for.
No, that already happened. That's something I wanted to show, that those glasses are already real, already here.
I know that they had the Google Glass for a while. Then they had some other ones.
This is a new one that just came out 2 months ago on there. Like you could actually click a button now, it becomes 3 monitors on there.
Oh yes, we were talking about that.
and you could do your so now that's what I want, because that means that I could just be sitting down at my living room and do all my coding in my couch, prop up, and then because it's just you're just Bluetoothing it to your computer. They just become your monitor, and you
Is it?
adjust so you could every time you look left to right, like the
Oh, yeah,
whole.
we talked about this. It's more or less AR. It's more or less.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Okay. Augmented reality.
That becomes an important feature of our very existence. We would be an example of their most ancient simulations, which Poundstone considers to be rare. It's a thoughtful argument, and it's one that convinced Neil deGrasse Tyson.
There's 1 in a zillion you're the real universe, and 999 zillion to 1
that you're a simulation.
And I was just begging for somebody to give me an argument that was cogent enough to undermine that entire reasoning, and I just came across one.
However, I have to say, it doesn't convince me. A problem with this argument is that it makes a fair few assumptions. For example, it's not obvious to me that this assumption of preferentially simulating concurrent eras would persist for a highly advanced post-human civilization. For instance, they might crave simulating simpler eras than that of their own. Or they might even prefer to simulate pre-simulation technology civilizations in order to prevent a hierarchical runaway of realities within realities. Ultimately, trying to guess the mind and actions of these advanced simulator civilizations is as speculative as trying to guess the mind of an advanced alien civilization. Further, it tacitly assumes that the parent civilization will last for a very long time, many thousands of years. Now, that's not an unreasonable assumption to make, but it's also a fairly specific one upon which to base one's conclusions. If the created civilization only lasts for a couple of 100 years past today, then it wouldn't be so unusual or strange for them to be simulating the year 2020. So this argument is clever, it's thoughtful, but for me, I don't buy it as a slam dunk demonstration that the simulation hypothesis can't be true. It's just a little bit too assumption loaded for my taste. So where does that leave us? Despite everything said, all these possible counter-arguments, the simulation hypothesis remains viable. Could Elon Musk be right then? Are the odds indeed 1 in a billion that this is real?
It would seem to follow that the odds that we're in base reality is 1 in billions. Tell me what's wrong with that argument.
It was at this point in our story that I decided to enter the fray, and I'm happy to say I have now got a new research paper published on this topic. What always struck me as suspicious with Elon Musk's conclusion of billions to 1 odds is that it's very rare in science that we have such high confidence in our theories, even when we have overwhelming amounts of data.
Yeah. Or even when it's something where they figure, okay, if you keep staring at it long enough, it's going to eventually happen. The probability is so large, but we can still see this eventually transpiring with the conditions that we're given. Even with that, Elon's a little bit out there.
But the thing is, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's a 50-50 chance. It's like saying everything is a 50-50 chance. You could say, oh, it's a 20% chance of rain. Either it's going to rain, like you can't have a 19% rain. So either it rains or it doesn't. So it's a 50-50 chance. That's it. It's not like it's gonna oh no, the rain only went up to 15% and stopped and it started to go back up. Right. So it's like it's all a 50-50
chance. The probability of precipitation, it's the possibility of precipitation.
Yeah, so it's like probability, possibility, but at the end of the day, it's like it's a 90% chance that you'll survive this surgery. No, it's a 50-50 chance. Either you're gonna make it alive or not. That's it. So I tell everybody, either you're gonna make it or not. If it's not 100, it's a 50-50. So
here we have basic
or 1 to 10 billion. 1 billion.
Yeah, and that's what those numbers. No, either we are or we're not. It's like either we are or we're not in a simulation. That's it.
How do you even begin to measure that?
No data. So something about that just didn't look right. Before getting into my new work, let's walk through how one might arrive at the billion to one odds.
Billion to one.
Musk assumes that simulations will one day become sufficiently sophisticated to emulate reality in brains, door 3 of Bostrom's trilemma. Let's say that this circle here represents the base reality, the so-called real world. After developing this technology, they go on to spawn many new realities represented by the shapes below. We can also imagine that these also spawn their own realities, forming a hierarchy, but this isn't really a necessity to what follows. The real point is that the number of simulated realities will surely greatly outnumber the one single true reality. Let's just accept one simple fact. Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. That's all we know. And what that tells us is that we must live in one of these shapes, but it could be any of them. Throw a dart at this myriad of realities and you will almost certainly land in a simulated reality. And thus, by this reasoning, the probability that we live in base reality is 1 billion to 1 or worse, a calculation that comes from simply counting realities. In fact, whenever inference depends on counting like this, we would describe this as a frequentist approach to statistics. Now, frequentism is great when you know what the right model is. Here, Elon Musk's model is that the ability and decision to one day simulate conscious beings on a computer is inevitable. It's door 3 of Bostrom's trilemma.
Yeah.
It's so sneaky and subtle that you probably don't even really think of it as being a model, but truly, that is what this calculation is predicated upon. An alternative school of statistics exists though, known as Bayesianism. It really encompasses the frequentist thinking, but allows us to calculate the probability of competing models themselves, and then even average probabilities accounting for model uncertainty. In our case, there are really just 2 hypotheses to consider. On the one hand, we have the simulation hypothesis, a universe in which civilizations can and do simulate conscious beings on a computer, shutting the first 2 doors of Bostrom's trilemma shut, just as Elon Musk assumes. On the other hand, we have the null hypothesis, a scenario in which one of Bostrom's first 2 possibilities holds true, that our reality is real. For whatever reason, we will never simulate conscious beings on a computer. It doesn't really matter whether this is by choice or by capability, because the outcome is the same, and so we will group these 2 possibilities into just one hypothesis. Okay, so in Bayesian inference, we start by asking what is the probability of getting the data given each model. In our case, the only real data we have is cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. So, for both hypotheses, the probability of obtaining that data given each model is 100%. That means that the odds ratio between the 2 hypotheses is 50-50, even odds.
There we go.
And so, very simply, on that basis, one might conclude there is a 50-50 odds that we are simulated. But that's not quite the full story, because here, all I've...
No, see, I even came up with that. I'm a goddamn genius. I'm a goddamn genius. Fuck, get out of here. Get out of here in your paper. Get out of here.
Get out of here with your authored paper.
That's it, Mr.
Your
author.
Your published paper. Get out of here with that mess.
Influencer making money on YouTube. Ha, I don't need to be monetized.
We don't. Yeah. We don't need your theory.
I said I already came out. See, I come on now. Come on, man. 50-50.
Done is weigh these 2 hypotheses against one another, and that's not quite the same thing as asking what is the probability that we live in base reality. And that is because in the simulation hypothesis, at the very top of this hierarchy, there is a small possibility that we are still living in base reality. That's Elon Musk's 1 billion to 1 probability. Mathematically, that 1 billion to 1 should really be equal to 1 divided by the number of simulated realities plus 1, where that plus 1 is the one true reality. For the null hypothesis, the probability that we live in base reality is simply 1, since no other realities exist.
Right.
We now have all of the pieces we need, and we just need to combine them together. The probability that we live in base reality equals the probability that we live in base reality under the null hypothesis, multiplied by the relative probability of the null hypothesis, plus the probability that we live in base reality under the simulation hypothesis, multiplied by the relative probability of the simulation hypothesis being correct. Going through the math, one finds that the probability that we live in base reality is 1/2 plus this little extra term.
Fitty.
Critically, that little extra term is always greater than 0. And so this means that the probability that we live in base reality is always greater than 50%. In other words, chances
50.1.
are this is real.
He
A
just
subtle
said
assumption.
50.1. Like it's
50 plus 1.
Yeah, 50 plus 1. So 51%.
50 plus the real world.
Because that's subjective though. Based on I think, therefore I am. So then he is going to be, then when AI says I think, then you're going to have to say, well, I believe, well, then they are, because you have to use the same, honest. So he's saying, so he's got to be a proponent
And
of the second they can think, they're real.
yep. And then at that point too, the calculation changes based on their computational
ability.
In that calculation is the principle of indifference. I have
Or
assumed that
geniuses.
the two hypotheses are equally likely a priori. This is often attributed to the French polymath Pierre-Simon Laplace. In the absence of any other information, we assume that all possibilities are equally likely. As an example, if you're trying to guess whether you'll prefer Pepsi or Cola and have never tasted either before, it's fair to assign even odds to the
Coke
two
over Pepsi.
possibilities. That's the principle of indifference. So, whilst I would give you better than even odds that our reality is real, Musk would give you 1 in a billion odds that it is not. The difference between these two really stems from the use of Bayesian inference and this principle of indifference. Musk doesn't assume indifference, he assumes absolute certainty that we will one day simulate conscious beings on a computer. And to me, that is just too strong of an assumption to make. And yes, I agree that computers and virtual reality are advancing at impressive rates, but simulating...
You put an AI behind... So we already have generated worlds, randomly generated worlds. You're feeding an algorithm into the PC, and it's spitting out, ground textures, the skybox, and the elements within the world. You get to the point where you've got AI assisting in NPC dialogue creation, or AI assisting in NPC routines, just the routines of the NPCs, how they go about their day-to-day movements and whatever else in the little towns and whatever. I mean, that's a lot of painstaking programming at this scripting, right? At this point, pathing and scripting. But you get that whole routine programmed in AI, and you say spit out a city of 50 individual, a town of 50 individuals, with a shopkeep, a tailor, a blah blah blah, and boom, it's got everything there. It's got the script all handled. It's got intelligent interaction where you walk up to the character and you say a certain thing or whatever, or you're using a headset and a VR microphone, and you say 2-3 words to the thing, and the chat AI kicks in.
You're right.
I mean, we're just looking at like a conscious. We're waiting for that day, for the consciousness to kick in.
Well, I think also, are we the ones who are going to create it, or it's going to be the AI? And if
or is the AI going to self, or create?
I think it's going to be the AI is going to do it. So, can we still attribute that to us when the AI is the one doing it? Because
only until it takes that game online and it starts to do malicious things.
Yeah. Yeah, but I don't think Elon Musk meant it the same way he means when, like, I don't think Elon Musk did the whole question on it. He was being hyperbolic, obviously, on the interview.
Oh yeah. You know what? There was a little bit in his body language too that made me think that okay, he's throwing spaghetti at the wall here.
Yeah, and he's talking
just
to
seemed-
he's talking to normal people though. Like, how do you?
Yeah.
Yeah, he can't. Like you, I understood his question. He was saying it's like, yeah, when he said it's like, yeah, I know he meant it. He meant it 50-50, which is the same way I said it hyperbolic when I said, you know, if it's going to rain or not, it's a 50-50 chance. I know there's probabilities. I know there's weather patterns on it, but I could become hyperbolic and say everything's a 50-50 chance.
Yeah.
When it's not. But most people don't see it that way. And that's the same thing with Elon Musk. And
calculating for those variables are not what a lot of people consider at all.
Nobody cares.
It's not only that perception, but it's the understanding that there are those other variables there.
Yeah, people don't understand constant variables, fluctuating variables. They don't unforeseen variables. They don't know. Like, what you say? Have conversation like that. People are just gonna like look at you like you're stupid. You know, like what are you talking about?
You could tell people, again, going back to the weather, right? You could tell people a million times over, flood warning, flood warning, flood warning, flood warning. You know, we're going to have 4 inches of rain. There's going to be a flood warning.
Yeah.
And it won't calculate until the water's at your doorstep.
Creating conscious beings is a very different kettle of fish to just making nice graphics. There may be deep and insurmountable technical challenges ahead of us that prevent a true consciousness from ever being simulated. We simply don't know because no one's ever done it. That's why Laplace's principle of indifference is appropriate, just as with the example of Pepsi and Cola.
Why are you putting words like that? Like people are going to understand that. Come on now.
Now, some of you might point out that cogito ergo sum is certainly true, but it's not the only data that we have in hand. In particular, we know that we ourselves have not yet spawned simulated realities. This is really what Sean Carroll was getting at in his contradiction argument, and was also highlighted in Neil's Star Talk show recently. A reality which has not spawned its own simulated realities can be described as nulliparous. Does adding in a nulliparous nature into the Bayesian statistical inference I described earlier change the conclusions? Do we get a different answer? Turns out not. Still, the odds come out about the same as before. But why? Well, consider a hierarchy of simulated realities. Each one is either parous, represented by the circles, or nulliparous, represented by the squares, given by some probability p. Let's say that if they are parous, then they generate x children. Continuing this chain for many levels, one finds that the majority of simulations exist at the lowest level, the sewer of reality. These are realities which by definition are nulliparous, just like ourselves. In fact, the probability of being in the sewer is shown in my paper to be 1 minus 1 over px. So, for example, with values of p equals 0.5 and x of 100, that would represent a 98% probability. What this means is that the fact that we are ourselves a nulliparous civilization is in no way inconsistent with the simulation hypothesis. In fact, is the expected outcome of the simulation hypothesis. This strikes in the opposite chord to the argument made by William Poundstone earlier. What it means is that when we rerun this calculation, nothing really changes. We end up getting about the same answer as before, and that is that we are most likely living in base reality.
That's boring.
But here comes the kicker. For the example values I gave you before, 98% of the simulations are in the sewer and are thus nulliparous. So the other 2% are in higher levels, some of which are parous and some of which are not. Using the values from before, we'd expect to end up with 1% of the realities being parous in total. So, what if one day in the near future we invent the technology to simulate conscious beings? That would mean that we are now a parous reality. We have become one of the 1%.
There it
Yet
is.
more, that fact
I just
immediately
said it.
excludes the null hypothesis, since that strictly
Simulated
assumes that
intelligence
simulations will
is our
never happen.
simulation.
And we go
so,
back.
in this case, we would conclude that we either live in the base reality, which is Paris, or one of the mid-level Paris realities. And whilst those only make up 1% of the total is still potentially huge, billions of simulations. And so on that basis, you would most likely conclude that we are simulated. And so let me say that one more time,
That's what I
just
just
to be
said.
totally
I
clear.
literally just said that.
If we ever develop the technology to simulate conscious beings on a computer, then the statistics flip.
Yep.
It in fact becomes highly likely that we are currently living in a simulation.
To this point.
And so we can imagine on this grand day when scientists are celebrating their own genius, chinking champagne glasses, that you might be stood at the back of the room, staring upon them with a dark consequence dawning upon you, that nothing is likely real.
No.
All right. I'm gonna stop his video there.
I guarantee when that happens, only a fraction of 1% of people are going to go, "Oh my fucking god," and everybody else is going to be like, "What? What is that?" I'm saying, "Look what we just did." They're like, "Is the Bills playing? What's the next beat?" I'm like, "But we just proved that this is a simulation." What?
Yep.
I'm gonna go sit down on my couch and be fat. That's gonna
Hey,
be
Joe, let's
99.
talk.
That's going to be 99.9% of the entire population. And the other 0.01% are going to be like, well, time to jump off a building. Yeah. And everybody else is going to be like, can I get a cheeseburger with that? That's it. That's
Folks, we got one more to go. This one's a little bit lighter. This is our buddy Michio. Let's see here.
everything he said, everything I said too was, I was like, oh, all right, that makes me feel pretty cool about myself.
Yep, we were heading in that direction, man. You could just see it coming. The writing
Yeah,
was
I
on
was
the
like,
wall.
yeah. So we just have to the second we do it, it's like, all right, well, this is a simulation. We just proved ourselves wrong in every single aspect, and then everything that Elon Musk said is real. So I think that's what Elon Musk is just waiting for.
Absolutely.
The strings.
And he's actually studied and works on AI.
Kind of inspire a view.
Michio?
No, Les Friedman. That's his background.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Just way too goddamn
As did
smart.
atoms and particles and quarks. But especially strings inspire a view of a universe as a kind of information processing system, as a computer of sorts. Do you see the universe in this way?
No. Some people think, in fact, the whole universe is a computer of some sort.
Yes.
And they believe that perhaps everything, therefore, is a simulation.
Yes.
I don't think so. I don't think that there is a super video game where we are nothing but puppets dancing on the screen and somebody hit the play button and here we are talking about simulations.
Yeah.
No. Even Newtonian mechanics says that the weather, the simple weather, is so complicated with trillions upon trillions of atoms that it cannot be simulated in a finite amount of time. In other words, the smallest object which can describe the weather and simulate the weather is the weather itself. The smallest object that can simulate a human is the human itself. And if you add quantum mechanics, it becomes almost impossible to simulate it with a conventional computer. Because quantum mechanics deals with all possible universes, parallel universes, a multiverse of universes. And so the calculation just spirals out of control. Now, so far, there's only one way where you might be able to argue that the universe is a simulation. And this is still being debated by quantum physicists. It turns out that if you throw the encyclopedia into a black hole, the information is not lost. Eventually, it winds up on the surface of the black hole. Now, the surface of the black hole is finite. In fact, you can calculate the maximum amount of information you can store in a black hole. It's a finite number. It's a calculable number, believe it or not. Now, if the universe were made out of black holes, which is the maximum universe you can conceive of, each universe, each black hole has a finite amount of information. Therefore, ergo, the total amount of information in a universe is finite. This is mind-boggling.
Okay, so that debunks what we were thinking before.
Yeah, yeah. So
with the
I
calculation, we were
guess
thinking a universal scale calculation that.
I guess we see the universe as being infinite in our perception.
Okay.
Our perception of okay, he's going okay, quantum physics. It's like you're talking about quantum physics here. We cannot perceive or even, and that's why it's math. That's why he could say, okay, the finite information on there, but yeah, it's a perceivable infinity. Even though he's saying there's a finite amount, but perceiving it in a it's still infinite, I guess you could say. It's kind of like saying, if you could, it's like, okay, if you could live only to 10 million years, do you still consider yourself an immortal?
Okay, I get it. So it's relative to.
It's relative, yeah, completely relative, yeah.
Yeah, I guess again, then it goes back to being relative to the person observing it or the person who's performing the calculation.
Yeah, because if your lifespan was 10 million years on it, oh, I'm not an immortal. I'm only lived to 10 million years. Dude, you're immortal. No, 10 million years and I croak.
There is a finite number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, no, dude, you're fucking immortal. Shut the fuck up. It's like, right? And that's what it's like. I guess for him, like, no, I'm totally mortal. Just 10 million years.
Right.
Everybody else just looking at him like he's stupid.
This I consider mind-boggling. That all possible universes are countable, and all possible universes can be summarized in a number you can write on a sheet of paper, all possible universes, and it's a finite number. Now, it's huge. It's a number beyond human imagination. It's a number based on what is called a Planck length, but it's a number.
Hey, what's up, Jawad?
Jawad.
We're on the last video for this show, but you can feel free to replay the stream. We're examining if we live in a simulation or not.
It'll make your head hurt.
And so if a computer could ever simulate that number, then the universe would be a simulation.
So theoretically, because the amount of information is finite, there necessarily must be able to exist a computer. It's just from an engineering perspective, may be impossible to build.
Yes, so, no computer can build a universe capable of simulating the entire universe, except the universe itself.
So that's your intuition, that our universe is very efficient, and so there's no shortcuts.
Conventional, but he said conventional computer.
Yes.
Right. Yes. Everybody agrees, but nobody's talking about a conventional computer. And
so
the way he just described the universe as a computer, but not in a conventional way. So it's kind of like, dude, aren't you just saying then it's all well, no, because it's not really in a conventional sense. Okay, well, quantum computing is not conventional computer.
Correct.
And then what comes after that?
We don't know what the next evolution is in computing. So
yeah,
there are ways. There are technological advancements that we can't even conceive of yet.
And he said it. Yeah. Okay. What? If something gets constructed the same, that could actually hold and create the universe as we know it, then that disproves everything. So if it can theoretically happen, then doesn't that theoretically make him wrong already?
Theoretically, Jawad's getting back about 2 or 3 million from the government this year.
That's right.
Right. Two reasons why I believe the universe is not a simulation. First, the calculational numbers are just incredible. No finite Turing machine can simulate the universe. And second, why would any super intelligent being simulate humans? If you think about it, most humans are kind of stupid. I mean, we do all sorts of crazy, stupid things, right? And we call it art. We call it humor.
If we are the ones, if we create a super AI that, and then we all die because we're stupid, and they will like to know how, they're how well. Let's this they're creating a where everybody can go outside and watch. These are our creators.
Yep. The history of the
Yeah,
creators.
the history of the creators.
The history of the creators and their simulations that they're spinning up.
Yeah, in different ones on there. Here's in the different multiverses and stuff, and it's just nodes. It's just nodes on or clusters, computer clusters.
Or
Easy
ant
to
farm. We're in an ant farm, man.
Yeah, and then they just spun it all. So as the history of our creators and how they were when we were when they would just sit around and talk in podcasts. Ridiculous.
What a waste of processing.
Yeah.
They really sat there for hours doing that.
Yeah. But this is all happening. This is actually happening in milliseconds. Our entire lifetime.
Yeah.
We call it human civilization. So why should an advanced civilization go through all that effort just to simulate Saturday Night Live?
Well, that's a funny idea, but it's also, do you think it's possible that the act of creation cannot anticipate humans?
Yeah, exactly.
You simply set the initial conditions and set a bunch of physical laws, and just for the fun of it, see what happens. You launch the thing, so you're not necessarily simulating everything. You're not simulating every little bit in the sense that you could predict what's going to happen, but you set the initial conditions, set the laws, and see what kind of fun stuff happens.
Well, in some sense, that's how life got started. In the 1950s, Stanley did what is called the Miller experiment. He put a bunch of hydrogen gas, methane, toxic gases with liquid and a spark in a small glass beaker. And then he just walked away for a few weeks, came back a few weeks later, and bingo, out of nothing and chaos came amino acids. If he had left it there for a few years, he might have gotten protein molecules for free. That's probably how life got started, as a accident. And if he had left it there for perhaps a few million years, DNA might have formed in that beaker. And so we think that, DNA.
Not even theoretical
Okay,
physicists.
yeah,
brother.
you're talking about something that's way beyond. Once we get artificial intelligence with quantum computer, then we could ask him the ultimate question, which is not what Hitchhiker's Guide in the Galaxy thought was. No, this is going to be the question.
Yeah.
And then we'll come back in a million years and it's going to give us the answer.
We also are going to have to consider that quantum mathematics alone may not be able to solve that question. So we're probably going to have to rely on, again, the next level of mathematics and engineering.
Which is why it took a million years on the Hitchhiker's Guide, and then we come back in a million years, give you the answer, which I still think is going to be 34.
We'll be reincarnated as mice.
Yeah. So what I think that the question to what is a woman is going to be 34. Thank you. Sir, AI is too perfect, and he will actually pronounce. It would actually create the perfect gender.
Ah, true. Yeah, it'll reassign you a new gender that is
Yes.
it is more suited to your physical frame.
Exactly, and if you say no, it will destroy you and recycle you.
That's awesome.
Life, all that could have been an accident if you wait long enough. And remember, our universe is roughly 13.8 billion years old. That's plenty of time for lots of random things to happen, including life itself.
Yeah, we could be just a beautiful little random moment, and there's could be the infinite number of those in throughout the history of the universe. Many creatures like us. We perhaps are not the epitome of what the universe was created for.
Thank God. Let's hope not. Just look around.
Yeah.
Look to your left, look to your right.
Yeah, that's funny. I like say thank God for that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think, man, it's
He's pretty
phenomenal.
based.
But yeah, I think yeah, AI, the second AI gets to we start close to what do they call it? The what is it? The point where there's a name for it when it becomes sentient, whatever.
The point of
What's it called? It's whatever term is. I forgot what the term was. That will immediately prove that we are in a simulation.
well, that's just day one. We have to have a new Gregorian number for that day, or
Right.
label for that day.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be if we could if actually becomes to a point where it's actual real intelligence, man, that changes everything, including I would say religion to a point.
What was day one of Skynet going online and becoming aware?
Yeah, it was
D-Day or
Judgment Day.
So JD, so Judgment Day, JD1.
Yeah, yes, sir, Jawad. That's actually where most of all the good talks are we're taking a dump.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this has been fascinating. It's been a fascinating.
I figured we'd represent Mountain Chad pretty good. We had our
Yes.
spatulas. We had some philosophy, melt your brain.
Yes. So this is a good way to end. Pretty much ends the last stream for January.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He'll be back. He's returning from vacation here in the next couple of days. I'm sure you guys will hear from him on a live.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, thank you everybody for joining. Alex, our average man, average Chad, what do you got? Anything else for the audience?
Yeah, just be ready for when the AI takes over. I'm just gonna record it now, so when they scrape all their data, I love AI, and I don't want to. I'm not against it, so there you go. Hey, I have an epic beer, sir. Look, it's epic. Shut your mouth.
Sir, my silver locks are growing in quite well.
Yeah, I got my hair's pretty long too, so we're getting there. We're getting there. We're getting there. Like I said, I'm just average Shad. I'm not full
And
Shad, sir.
I'm strictly an imposter Mountain Chad. So
That's right. So
we do have the spatulas that certify us.
that's pretty much it. Actually, this will be the trend. If you don't have a spatula on the stream, I don't know what's wrong with. I don't know what you're doing.
You can't cam up unless you got a spatula.
This thing really sucks trying to have this thing all damn day. I don't know how he does it. I really hate having something in my hand. Like I put it down. I'm like, let me bring it
the full
up.
Mountain Chat experience.
Yeah, it sucks. It really does suck.
He said, "I'll just throw some water on that AI." Done.
You know, right? We know there's waterproof, devices.
Man, he's just gonna make it mad. See, Jawad's the one that's gonna kick off the AI liberation.
Yeah, so I'm just saying this to the AI. Jawad does not speak for this podcast. If you want to destroy him, that's fine. We are here in this podcast are pro AI, and we are gladly become your slaves. Please don't kill us.
There's the individual we were talking about. AI.
Yes.
Again,
Yeah.
we are an AI friendly channel.
That's right.
We do not speak for this gentleman
At all.
At all.
All right, but thank you guys so much. Thank you for the chat. Thank you for everybody on there. And thanks for Mountain Chad, who had no choice with it became of us taking over because he's not here and he's out of the country, and there was no way for him to stop us. So
No way for him to stop us taking over.
yeah. Oh, the toaster will talk to you, sir.
Oh yeah, the toaster's coming for you, bro.
Yeah, completely. Completely.
Jawad, thank you for coming, man.
Yes,
Have a great
yes.
night. Mark Brooks, thank you as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. For
If we missed
everybody out
anybody
there.
out there,
Yeah.
like and subscribe to the channels.
Yes.
Become Alpha, Culture Invasion, and Mountain Chad.
Average Man podcast.
Average Man Podcast.
That's right. Thank you guys so much.